The red warning lights flashed across the combat training room as another cadet's simulation ended in complete failure. Smoke rose from the destroyed virtual battlefield while scattered alien recruits watched their classmates stumble out of the pod, shaking and pale. This made it the 15th consecutive defeat this month alone. Instructor Kira folded her forearms across her chest and shook her head. Her silver Altani skin gleamed under the harsh academy lights as she surveyed the nervous faces before her. Each cadet represented the finest military minds from across the 12 allied species. Yet none could handle what the humans called basic warfare. Another failure, Kira announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets across 3 star systems. The Earth simulation has claimed another victim. Tell me, Cadet Ren, what went wrong in there? The young Voltari's blue skin had turned almost purple from stress. His normally confident bearing was completely shattered. Instructor, the humans, they don't follow any logical patterns. My forces had superior technology, better training, and numerical advantage. But they kept appearing where they shouldn't be, using weapons that shouldn't work and fighting in ways that make no tactical sense. Exactly, Kira replied, walking between the rows of seated cadets. This is why the Earth Sim exists. For 3 standard years, no cadet has managed to defeat this program. It recreates the warfare methods of one of the most dangerous species we've ever encountered. A species so violent and unpredictable that the Galactic Council has classified their entire planet as a restricted zone. In the back row, a figure shifted uncomfortably. Alex kept her head down, pretending to take notes while her heart raced. She had enrolled at the academy under false papers, claiming to be from a distant human colony that had achieved peaceful development. The truth was far more complicated. She was born on Earth itself, in the ruins of what had once been called New York, and had seen firsthand the kind of warfare these simulations tried to recreate. Kira activated the main display screen, showing tactical readouts from the previous simulation. Look at these human tactics. They use their own wounded as bait. They sacrifice entire units to achieve minor strategic advantages. They employ psychological warfare that breaks the minds of their enemies before the first shot is fired. No civilized species fights this way. A Christek cadet raised one of his crystalline appendages. Instructor, why do we study these humans if they're so dangerous? Surely our advanced technology would overcome their primitive methods. That's exactly the kind of thinking that gets entire fleets destroyed, Kira replied sharply. 3 cycles ago, the Draxi Empire made that same assumption. They sent a reconnaissance force to observe human military capabilities. The humans detected the observers and somehow managed to capture an entire battle cruiser, using nothing but scrap metal and chemical explosives. The classroom fell silent. The Draxi were known throughout the galaxy as master warriors, beings who lived for honor and combat. The idea that primitive humans could defeat them seemed impossible. The humans didn't just capture the ship, Kira continued. They reverse-engineered the technology within days and used it to improve their own defenses. By the time the Draxi sent a rescue mission, the humans had fortified their entire planet. The rescue fleet barely escaped with half their ships intact. Alex remembered that day differently. She had been part of the engineering team that figured out the alien technology, but they hadn't been trying to build weapons. They were desperate to understand if these visitors were friendly or hostile. When the larger fleet arrived and immediately began charging weapons, humanity had reacted the only way it knew how, with everything they had. The Earth Sim uses data collected from thousands of human conflicts, Kira explained, pulling up historical battle footage. Wars where humans fought each other with such intensity that entire continents were left uninhabitable. They called it total war, the complete mobilization of every resource, every citizen, every possible advantage in pursuit of victory. The footage showed grainy images of massive explosions, cities reduced to rubble and humans fighting in conditions that would kill most alien species within minutes. Alex recognized some of the battles. Her grandmother had survived the resource wars of 23A7, and the stories she told still gave Alex nightmares. But Instructor, asked a Makani cadet, his robotic voice processing the information. Surely such warfare is inefficient. The casualties, the resource expenditure, the long-term damage to infrastructure. Inefficient, yes. But terrifyingly effective, Kira replied. Humans don't fight to minimize losses or preserve resources. They fight to win regardless of cost. This makes them unpredictable to any species that values efficiency or logical decision-making. She gestured to the simulation pod that had just claimed another victim. The Earth sim doesn't just test your tactical abilities. It tests your psychological resilience against an enemy that will sacrifice anything and everything to achieve victory. An enemy that treats war not as a profession, but as a survival mechanism. Alex watched her fellow cadets absorb this information. Some looked afraid, others skeptical. None of them understood that the humans in those old battles weren't monsters or natural killers. They were scared people fighting for their families, their homes, their very existence. But how could she explain that without revealing who she was? Your assignment for tomorrow, Kira announced, is to study the tactical manual on human guerrilla warfare. Pay special attention to their use of terrain, improvised weapons, and what they call asymmetric tactics. Perhaps one of you will be clever enough to find a weakness in their methods that 3 years of previous cadets have missed. As the class began to file out, Alex remained seated staring at the simulation pod. She could defeat that program easily. She knew every tactic it would use, every psychological pressure it would apply, every trick it would attempt. But doing so would reveal her true identity, and potentially put Earth in even greater danger. The question that haunted her wasn't whether she could beat the simulation. The question was whether she should. Every failure reinforced the galaxy's fear of humanity, but would a victory make things better or worse? As she watched Instructor Kira reset the pod for tomorrow's class, Alex realized that decision might soon be taken out of her hands entirely. The Academy's bells chimed the start of another training day, but the atmosphere in the combat room felt different. Word had spread about yesterday's spectacular failure, and now cadets from other classes crowded around the observation windows. Everyone wanted to witness another attempt at the impossible Earth sim instructor. Kira surveyed the eager faces with satisfaction. Fear was an excellent teacher, and nothing taught respect for human warfare like watching confident warriors reduced to trembling recruits. She had handpicked today's volunteer from her most promising students. "Cadet Dex, step forward," she commanded. A tall Voltari male approached the simulation pod with confident strides. His blue skin showed the ceremonial scars of victory from the Academy's previous challenges, and his dark eyes held the steady gaze of someone who had never experienced true defeat. Among his species, Dex was considered a tactical prodigy. "Tell the class about your qualifications," Kira instructed. Dex straightened his shoulders. "I graduated first in my class from the Voltari War College. I have completed 17 different combat simulations with perfect scores. My strategic planning helped win the Outer Rim skirmishes against the rogue mining guilds." Several cadets nodded with approval. If anyone could crack the Earth sim, it would be Dex. His reputation for logical thinking and adaptive tactics was legendary among the student body. Alex watched from her usual spot in the back row, her stomach churning with anxiety. She recognized the look in Dex's eyes. It was the same confidence she had seen in Earth's military leaders right before they encountered something that changed everything. Pride came before the fall, as humans like to say. "Very good," Kira said, gesturing toward the simulation pod. "The scenario you will face is designated Guerrilla Campaign 7. Your mission is to pacify a rebellious human settlement using standard peacekeeping protocols. You command a full battalion of advanced troops with superior firepower and technology. The human resistance consists of approximately 200 fighters with primitive weapons." Dex nodded and climbed into the pod. The neural interface activated with a soft hum, and his consciousness transferred into the virtual battlefield. Around the room, cadets leaned forward to watch the tactical display screens that would show his progress. The simulation began in a mountainous region dotted with small human settlements. Dex's forces appeared at the valley entrance, equipped with energy weapons, armored vehicles, and air support. Their mission parameters were simple: eliminate resistance and restore order with minimal collateral damage. "Textbook approach," commented one observer as Dex deployed his troops in standard formation. His vehicles advanced along the main road while infantry units spread out to secure the high ground. Air patrols established a perimeter to prevent enemy escape. Alex bit her lip as she watched the familiar terrain. This simulation was based on the Appalachian resistance of 2391, a conflict she had studied extensively. The humans in this scenario weren't random fighters. They were miners, farmers, and shopkeepers who had been pushed too far by corporate occupation. They knew every cave, every trail, every hidden passage in these mountains. The first attack came without warning. Dex's lead vehicle simply vanished in a massive explosion, as buried explosives tore through its armor. The blast triggered a rock slide that blocked the road and separated his forces into isolated groups. Impossible, Dex muttered through the pod's audio system. Sensors showed no enemy movement in that area, but the humans were already moving. Small groups emerged from concealed positions, striking at confused alien troops before disappearing back into the terrain. They didn't fight fair. They didn't announce their presence. They simply killed efficiently and vanished. Kira paused the simulation to address the watching cadets. Notice how the humans use their environment as a weapon. They don't meet superior forces in open battle. Instead, they turn the battlefield itself into their ally. The simulation resumed and Dex attempted to adapt. He ordered his air support to scan for heat signatures while his ground troops regrouped. But the humans had anticipated this response. They lit dozens of decoy fires throughout the mountains while moving through underground tunnels that didn't appear on any map. They're using thermal camouflage, Dex reported, his voice showing the first hints of frustration. And they seem to know our standard procedures better than we do. Alex almost smiled at that observation. Of course they knew alien tactics. Humans had been studying galactic military doctrine for decades, preparing for exactly this kind of encounter. Every battle simulation the Academy ran was based on real conflicts where humans had been forced to innovate or die. The human fighters struck again, this time targeting Dex's communications array. A small group of humans appeared on a distant ridge, fired a single rocket at the antenna and disappeared before return fire could reach them. Without communications, Dex's coordinated response began to fall apart. "This is illogical," complained a Christech observer. "They're sacrificing tactical advantages for purely psychological effects." "Are they?" Kira asked pointedly. "Watch what happens next." With his communications disrupted, Dex's units began operating independently. Each group tried to complete their assigned objectives without coordination with the others. The humans exploited this confusion ruthlessly, hitting isolated squads with overwhelming local force while avoiding areas where aliens remained concentrated. But it was the psychological warfare that truly began to break Dex's forces. The humans didn't just attack and withdraw. They left messages. Bodies arranged to send warnings. Equipment destroyed in ways that required intimate knowledge of how it worked. Most disturbing of all, they began using captured alien technology against its creators. "How are they learning our system so quickly?" Dex demanded as his own energy weapons were turned against his troops. "Because they have to," Alex whispered, so quietly that only she could hear. Humans didn't have the luxury of standardized equipment or extensive training programs. They learned by necessity, adapted by survival, and innovated because standing still meant death. The final blow came when the humans managed to hack Dex's command vehicle. They didn't steal it or destroy it. Instead, they fed false information through his own tactical network, convincing his scattered units to fire on each other in the confusion. Dex emerged from the simulation pod, pale and shaking. His perfect record was shattered, his confidence destroyed by an enemy that refused to follow any rules he understood. "Failure," Kira announced to the silent room. "Complete and total failure. The humans achieved their objectives while suffering minimal losses. Your superior technology and training meant nothing against an enemy willing to fight without honor or restraint." As the other cadets filed out, discussing what they had witnessed in hushed tones, Alex remained behind. She stared at the simulation pod, knowing she could have warned Dex about every trap, every tactic, every psychological pressure he would face. The humans in that simulation weren't monsters. They were people fighting for their homes using the only advantages they possessed: knowledge of their terrain, willingness to sacrifice, and the ability to adapt faster than their enemies could respond. But explaining that would require revealing who she was, and Alex wasn't ready for that conversation yet. News of Dex's failure spread through the academy like wildfire. By the time the next class session began, cadets from every department had found excuses to observe the Earth Sim demonstrations. The training room buzzed, with nervous energy as beings from across the galaxy witnessed their finest warriors being systematically dismantled by primitive human tactics. Instructor. Kira stood before the packed room with grim satisfaction. 3 more cadets had volunteered to attempt the simulation. each representing different tactical philosophies that had proven successful across known space. If these approaches failed, it would cement humanity's reputation as the galaxy's most dangerous military threat. Today we will see 3 distinct methodologies tested against human warfare, Kira announced. First, the methodical precision of the Christek. Second, the honor-bound traditions of the Draxi. Finally, the analytical perfection of the Mechani. Pay attention to how humans adapt to counter each approach. Alex shifted uncomfortably in her seat as more cadets turned to look in her direction. Over the past few days, whispers had been circulating about the quiet student, who never volunteered for combat exercises despite excelling in theoretical studies. Her deliberate failures in practical training were starting to attract the wrong kind of attention. The first volunteer was Cadet Vale, a Christek whose crystalline body could process thousands of tactical variables simultaneously. Her species was known for patience and methodical planning, never making a move without calculating every possible outcome. "I will demonstrate how proper preparation defeats chaos," Vale declared as she entered the simulation pod. Her transparent form glowed with confidence as the neural interface activated. The scenario this time was designated Urban Pacification 4, based on human city fighting from the corporate wars. Vale's forces appeared at the edge of a sprawling metropolis filled with narrow streets, tall buildings, and countless hiding places. Her mission was to capture key strategic points while minimizing civilian casualties. Vale began with textbook precision. She deployed sensor drones to map every building, used satellite imagery to identify potential sniper positions, and established supply lines before advancing a single soldier. Her approach was flawless according to every military manual in the galaxy, but the humans didn't wait for her preparations to complete. They struck while her forces were still setting up, using sewers and subway tunnels to appear inside her supposedly secure perimeter. Worse, they had evacuated all civilians from the combat zone, eliminating Vale's need to worry about collateral damage and freeing them to use the most destructive tactics available. "They turned our strengths into weaknesses," Vale reported as human fighters used her own supply depots as bombing targets. "Every preparation we made gave them more opportunities to attack us." The humans fought with a 3-dimensional approach that Vale's methodical mind couldn't process fast enough. They moved through buildings both horizontally and vertically, using floors, ceilings, and walls as cover. They attacked from above and below simultaneously, while her forces tried to secure ground-level positions. When Vale finally emerged from the pod, her crystalline form was flickering with stress patterns. "They don't follow predictable sequences. Every action creates multiple potential responses, and they seem capable of choosing the most devastating option instantly." The second volunteer was Cadet Thorn, a massive Draxi warrior whose species valued honor above all else. His people had conquered dozens of worlds through personal courage and adherence to ancient combat codes. He approached the simulation with the confidence of someone whose ancestors had never known defeat in honorable battle. "Humans may be clever," Thorn declared, "but cleverness cannot overcome true warrior spirit." His scenario was Plains Campaign 2, based on humanity's ancient cavalry battles. Thorn commanded noble warriors mounted on energy-enhanced beasts, facing human forces equipped with primitive projectile weapons and basic vehicles. Thorn charged into battle with the traditional Draxi war cry, leading from the front as honor demanded. His warriors followed in perfect formation, their energy lances crackling with deadly power. Against any civilized enemy, this assault would have been overwhelming. The humans responded by shooting Thorn's mount out from under him. There was no challenge to single combat, no recognition of his rank or courage. The human forces simply concentrated their fire on the obvious leader and eliminated him before he could engage. When his warriors tried to rescue their fallen commander, the humans used the confusion to scatter the charge with explosive devices buried in the ground. "They show no respect for tradition," Thorn complained as his virtual forces were systematically destroyed. "They attack leaders first, ignore challenges to personal combat, and use dishonorable tactics like hidden weapons." The humans fought like pack hunters rather than individual warriors. They coordinated attacks without apparent communication, sacrificed themselves to create opportunities for others, and showed no hesitation about using any available weapon or tactic. Honor meant nothing to them compared to victory. Thorn's defeat was even more complete than the previous failures. His forces were not just beaten but humiliated. Their proud traditions turned into fatal vulnerabilities by an enemy that recognized no rules of engagement. The final volunteer was Cadet Prime, a mechani whose robotic body could calculate optimal responses faster than most beings could think. His species approached warfare as a mathematical exercise, believing that superior analysis would always triumph over chaotic emotion. Humans are biological entities governed by predictable drives, Prime stated as he entered the simulation. Once their behavioral patterns are analyzed, optimal countermeasures can be implemented. His scenario was Naval Engagement Alpha, based on humanity's ocean warfare from their industrial period. Prime commanded a fleet of advanced warships against human vessels using primitive chemical propulsion and basic armor. Prime began by analyzing human naval tactics from the previous 1,000 engagements. His computer mind identified patterns in their movement, cataloged their preferred weapons, and calculated optimal positioning. To exploit their technological disadvantages, the humans sank his flagship within the first 10 minutes. They had somehow anticipated his analytical approach and fed false information into his tactical computers. The patterns he thought he had identified were deliberately created illusions designed to lure his forces into a trap. When Prime's ships moved to exploit what seemed like a human weakness, they sailed directly into a minefield. Their behavior patterns are not consistent, Prime reported as his remaining ship struggled against human submarines that appeared to operate without logical coordination. They seemed capable of changing their fundamental approach mid-battle, based on observations of enemy responses. The humans fought with what could only be described as intuitive intelligence. They made decisions that were tactically unsound according to all known military theory. Yet somehow these irrational choices created opportunities that logical analysis missed. They sacrificed pieces like chess players, but their sacrifices opened possibilities that Prime's computational mind couldn't perceive. When all 3 simulations ended in failure, the room fell into stunned silence. The galaxy's finest tactical minds had been defeated by humans using methods that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Instructor Kira surveyed the shaken faces around her. You begin to understand why the Galactic Council fears these creatures. They don't fight to achieve objectives or maintain honor or solve mathematical problems. They fight to survive, and survival makes them capable of anything. Alex felt every eye in the room turning toward her. The whispers were getting louder, more pointed. Several cadets were openly staring at her now, and she could see recognition dawning in their expressions. Her careful disguise was crumbling under the weight of accumulated suspicion. Humans represent chaos incarnate, Kira continued. They adapt faster than we can analyze, sacrifice more than we can calculate, and fight with an intensity that breaks the minds of civilized beings. This is why Earth remains quarantined, and why contact with humanity is forbidden. In the back row, Alex's hands trembled as she realized her secret was about to be exposed. The question was no longer whether she could hide her identity, but what would happen when the truth came out. The Academy's communication networks hummed with excited chatter as news of the latest Earth sim failures reached every corner of the massive station. In dining halls, cadets from different species gathered to discuss the impossible scenarios they had witnessed. Training rooms emptied as everyone wanted to hear first-hand accounts from those who had attempted the legendary simulation. Instructor Kira found herself at the center of unprecedented attention. Senior faculty members who had dismissed her warnings about human warfare now sought her expertise. Academy administrators requested detailed reports on the psychological effects of the simulation. Even the station commander had asked for a private briefing on humanity's tactical capabilities. The pressure was building toward something inevitable, and Alex could feel it like a storm approaching. She sat in the Academy's observation deck, watching ships arrive and depart through the massive transparisteel windows, trying to calm her racing thoughts. Her false identity was hanging by threads, and each passing day brought new scrutiny. Cadet Alex, isn't it? She turned to find Cadet Ren, the Voltari who had failed the first simulation she had witnessed. His blue skin still showed stress patterns from his encounter with human tactics, but his expression was thoughtful rather than fearful. Yes, Alex replied carefully. You're feeling better after your simulation experience? Ren sat down beside her, his movements showing the careful control of someone who had learned to question his assumptions. That's what I wanted to discuss. Something about your reactions during class has been bothering me. Alex's heart began to race, but she kept her expression neutral. My reactions? When Instructor Kira shows footage of human battles, most cadets look horrified or confused. You look sad, like you're watching something personal rather than academic material. Ren studied her face intently. And you never volunteer for combat simulations despite scoring perfectly on every theoretical exam. Before Alex could respond, the General Assembly alarm echoed through the station. All cadets were required to report to the main auditorium immediately. Alex felt a mixture of relief and dread as they made their way through corridors filled with hurrying students. The auditorium was packed beyond capacity. Cadets filled every seat while others stood along the walls. Alex recognized faculty members from departments she had never visited. All drawn by the growing legend of the Earth Sim instructor, Kira took the stage with an expression of grim determination. Behind her, massive displays showed tactical readouts from the failed simulations, each one a testament to humanity's terrifying effectiveness in warfare. Fellow warriors and scholars, Kira began, her voice carrying across the silent auditorium. For 3 standard years, the Earth simulation has stood undefeated. 18 different species have attempted to overcome human tactics. All have failed. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The number 18 was higher than most cadets had realized. Alex had assumed the simulation was a recent addition to the curriculum, not a long-standing challenge that had stumped the galaxy's finest military minds. Today, Kira continued, I am making an unprecedented offer. Any cadet who can defeat the Earth Sim will receive immediate graduation with highest honors, regardless of their current academic standing. They will be fast-tracked to officer rank and given their choice of assignment in any fleet. The auditorium exploded in excited conversation. Such an offer had never been made before. The prizes Kira was offering represented the dreams of every cadet in the academy. However, Kira's voice cut through the noise. I want you to understand what you would be facing. The human species represents the greatest theoretical threat to galactic peace since the ancient destroyer wars. They are creatures forged by a death world that turned survival into an art form. New footage appeared on the displays, showing Earth's hostile environment, massive storms that could destroy continents, temperature variations that would kill most species, natural disasters that occurred with terrifying regularity. Alex recognized images of her homeworld, but seeing them through alien eyes made her realize how extraordinary human adaptation really was. Humans evolved to fight everything, Kira explained. Their own planet, their climate, their wildlife, and eventually each other. They developed warfare techniques that violate every principle of civilized combat, because their very existence depends on winning regardless of cost. Alex watched her fellow cadets absorb this information. Fear and fascination warred in their expressions as they tried to imagine what kind of beings could survive such conditions. She wanted to tell them that humans weren't monsters, just people who had learned to endure because the alternative was extinction. This is why the Earth Sim exists, Kira continued. Not to train you to fight humans, but to understand what we might face if they ever decide to leave their quarantined world. Any species capable of defeating our finest tactical minds using primitive technology represents a threat that must be understood. A Draxi cadet in the front row raised his hand. Instructor, if humans are so dangerous, why don't we simply eliminate the threat before it can spread? The question sent a chill through Alex, but Kira's response was even more terrifying. Because we tried that once. The hegemony sent a sterilization fleet to Earth 50 cycles ago. The humans detected them coming and somehow managed to capture 3 battle cruisers before the fleet could withdraw. Those captured ships provided them with technology they've been adapting ever since. Alex remembered hearing about that incident from her grandmother. The alien ships hadn't come to sterilize Earth. They had come to establish contact. But when they arrived armed and began scanning for military installations, humanity had reacted defensively. The captured technology had indeed changed everything, but not in the way the galaxy believed. The point is, Kira said, bringing her attention back to the present, that we cannot underestimate these creatures. They learn faster than we can adapt, fight harder than we can match, and survive conditions that would destroy civilized beings. The instructor paused, scanning the packed auditorium with calculating eyes. Which brings me to a disturbing rumor that has been circulating through the academy. Some suggest that we have a human among us, hiding their true nature while observing our methods. Alex felt the blood drain from her face as hundreds of eyes began scanning the crowd. Conversations erupted as cadets looked around suspiciously, trying to identify potential humans in their midst. If such an individual exists, Kira continued, they would possess unique insights into the Earth sim. Perhaps they might even be capable of defeating it. But that would require them to reveal their true nature and face the consequences of their deception. The crowd grew quiet again as the implications sank in. Alex realized that Kira had just issued a direct challenge. The instructor suspected her identity and was forcing her hand with the promise of rewards that any ambitious cadet would find irresistible. Near the front of the auditorium, Cadet Ren stood up slowly. Instructor, hypothetically speaking, if someone did possess such knowledge, wouldn't their success prove that humans can be understood and potentially reasoned with, rather than confirming their danger? Kira's expression grew predatory. An interesting theory, Cadet Ren. Perhaps you should share it with your friend who's been sitting behind you in our classes, the one who knows more about human tactics than her scores indicate. Every head in the auditorium turned toward Alex. Conversation stopped mid-sentence as hundreds of beings focused their attention on the quiet cadet in the back row. The moment she had been dreading for months had finally arrived. Alex stood up slowly, her legs trembling but her voice steady. Instructor Kira, I accept your challenge. The auditorium fell into absolute silence as she began walking toward the stage. Behind her, she could hear whispered conversations as cadets realized what her acceptance implied. By the time she reached the front of the room, everyone in the academy knew they were looking at their first human student. The question now was whether she would become their greatest success or their most dangerous mistake. The walk to the simulation pod felt like a journey across the entire galaxy. Every step Alex took echoed through the silent auditorium, as hundreds of beings watched her approach the machine that had broken their finest warriors. Whispered conversations followed in her wake as cadets processed the revelation that they had been studying alongside the very species they feared most. Instructor Kira stood beside the pod with her arms crossed, her silver skin reflecting the harsh lights as she studied Alex with new understanding. Before you begin, cadet, perhaps you should explain to your classmates exactly what you are. Alex stopped beside the pod and turned to face the assembled crowd. Her heart pounded against her ribs, but her voice remained steady. My name is Alex Chen. I was born on Earth, in the ruins of what my people once called New York. I came here under false documents because I wanted to understand how the galaxy sees my species. The auditorium erupted in excited chatter. Several cadets rose from their seats, some backing away in fear while others leaned forward with curiosity. Security personnel moved toward the exits, though whether to keep Alex in or everyone else out remained unclear. Impossible, declared a Christek observer. Humans are quarantined to their home world. No human has been permitted to leave Earth for over 50 cycles. Yet here I am, Alex replied simply. And I've been listening to your theories about human warfare for months. You're not entirely wrong, but you're missing the most important part. Kira raised one hand for silence. Before we proceed with philosophical discussions, there's the matter of your challenge. You claim to accept my offer, but I'm beginning to question whether it's fair to allow a human to attempt a simulation designed to defeat humans. Why not? Alex asked. If human tactics are truly unbeatable, then even a human should fail against a perfect recreation of human warfare. Unless you're admitting that your simulation isn't actually accurate. The challenge hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Kira had spent years building the Earth Sim's reputation as the ultimate test of tactical ability. To suggest it might be flawed would undermine everything she had taught about human capabilities. Very well, Kira decided. But understand that this simulation will show no mercy, simply because you share species with the enemy. The humans in this program will fight you as viciously as they have fought everyone else. Alex nodded and climbed into the pod. The neural interface felt different this time, perhaps because she was no longer hiding who she was. As her consciousness transferred into the virtual world, she felt a strange sense of coming home. The scenario that loaded was one she hadn't seen before. Colonial Uprising 9. Based on humanity's expansion wars during the early space age. Alex found herself commanding a peacekeeping force tasked with suppressing a rebellion on a distant human colony. The rebels were fighting for independence from Earth's corporate government, using guerrilla tactics and improvised weapons against her superior forces. For the first time in 3 years, the Earth Sim faced someone who truly understood both sides of the conflict. Alex studied the tactical display with growing recognition. This scenario was based on the Titan Rebellion of 2354, a conflict her grandfather had participated in as a young engineer. She knew the terrain, the political situation, and most importantly, the motivations driving both sides. Instead of deploying her forces for immediate assault, Alex did something unprecedented. She opened communication channels and began talking to the rebels. "This is Commander Chen of the Peacekeeping Force," she broadcast on all frequencies. "I know you're listening. I also know why you're fighting." The response came quickly, filled with suspicion and anger. "Another corporate lapdog sent to crush our freedom. We've heard your lies before." "I'm not here to lie to you," Alex replied. "I'm here because I understand what it's like to fight for your home. I know what it means to face overwhelming odds with nothing but determination and jury-rigged equipment. I know what drives people to sacrifice everything for the chance to live free." In the auditorium, cadets watched in stunned silence as Alex's forces remained stationary. No other cadet had attempted diplomacy with the simulation's human fighters. The program wasn't designed to respond to negotiation, but something extraordinary was happening. The simulated humans were reacting to Alex's words in ways their programming had never intended. Decades of careful psychological modeling had created artificial personalities capable of responding to emotional appeals rather than just tactical maneuvers. "You sound different from the others they've sent," admitted the rebel leader. "But talk is cheap. Your forces are still pointing weapons at our homes." Alex made a decision that would have horrified her instructors. She ordered her troops to lower their weapons and withdraw to a safe distance. "I'm ordering my forces to stand down. I want to meet with your leadership under a flag of truce." The auditorium buzzed with confusion as Alex's avatar left her command vehicle and walked alone toward the rebel position. Military doctrine from every known species warned against such actions. Leaders didn't expose themselves to personal danger for mere negotiations. But Alex understood something the simulation's creators had missed. These weren't mindless killers driven by bloodlust. They were people fighting for something they believed in, and people could be reached if you spoke their language. The meeting took place in a bombed-out school building, its walls covered with children's artwork from before the fighting began. Alex sat across from 3 rebel leaders, seeing the exhaustion and desperation in their virtual faces. "What do you want?" asked the rebel commander, a woman whose military bearing suggested former service in Earth's regular forces. "I want to understand your grievances," Alex replied. "And I want to find a solution that doesn't require anyone else to die." What followed was a conversation unlike anything the Earth Sim had ever generated. Alex listened to stories of corporate exploitation, broken promises, and families torn apart by economic policies. She heard about children who had never seen Earth, but were told they could never return home. She learned about workers who had built the colony with their own hands but were denied any voice in its government. Most importantly, she offered something no previous commander had provided: hope for change without violence. "I can't promise immediate independence," Alex explained, "but I can promise that your grievances will be heard by Earth's government. I can guarantee safe passage for representatives to present your case directly to the Colonial Council. And I can ensure that no retribution will fall on civilians if hostilities end now." The negotiation took hours of game time, far longer than any previous simulation attempt. Alex found herself drawing on knowledge she hadn't realized she possessed. Her grandfather's stories about corporate exploitation, her grandmother's experiences with wartime negotiations, her own understanding of human psychology and motivation. Slowly, impossibly, the rebels began to lay down their arms. Not through defeat, but through the hope that their voices might finally be heard. When Alex emerged from the simulation pod, the auditorium was silent. The tactical displays showed a result no one had imagined possible: complete mission success with 0 casualties on either side. "Impossible," Kira whispered, staring at the readouts. "The simulation's parameters don't allow for peaceful resolution. The humans are programmed to fight to the death." "They're programmed to fight for their freedom," Alex corrected gently. When you give them another path to that goal, they're smart enough to take it. She turned to address the packed auditorium, seeing wonder and fear warring in hundreds of alien faces. You've spent years studying human warfare, but you missed the most important thing about my species. We don't fight because we love violence. We fight because we love something enough to die for it. When you understand what we're protecting, you can find ways to achieve the same goals without bloodshed. The silence stretched for long moments before Cadet Wren stood up and began clapping. Others joined him slowly, until the entire auditorium thundered with applause for the human who had accomplished the impossible. But Alex knew this was only the beginning. Defeating the simulation was easy compared to the challenge that lay ahead. Convincing the galaxy that humanity deserved a chance to prove they could be partners rather than threats. The celebration in the auditorium continued for several minutes before Instructor Kira finally raised her hands for silence. Her silver features showed a mixture of confusion, anger, and something that might have been admiration as she struggled to process what had just occurred. "This is irregular," she announced, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet crowd. The simulation parameters were clearly compromised. No cadet has ever achieved mission success through negotiation, because the program isn't designed to allow peaceful resolution. Alex remained standing beside the simulation pod, her heart still racing from the encounter. The program worked exactly as designed, Instructor. It created realistic human personalities with believable motivations. When I addressed those motivations instead of just trying to eliminate the people who held them, the artificial humans responded the way real humans would. "Impossible," declared a Christech faculty member from the observation section. "Humans are documented as inherently violent. Every contact attempt has resulted in armed conflict. Because every contact attempt has involved armed fleets arriving at Earth without warning," Alex replied firmly. "My people have been studied like dangerous animals in a cage. No one has ever tried actually talking to us." Cadet Wren stood up again from his position near the front. "Alex is right. I've been reviewing the historical records since yesterday. Every first contact scenario involved military vessels approaching Earth with weapons active. Humans responded defensively because they perceived threats. Several other cadets began pulling up data on their personal devices, cross-referencing contact reports with standard military procedures. Murmurs spread through the crowd as patterns became apparent that had been overlooked for decades. Instructor Kira's expression grew more troubled as she realized the implications. "Even if your interpretation is correct, the fact remains that humans possess military capabilities far beyond what their technology level should allow. The Earth Sim has proven that repeatedly, has it?" Alex challenged. "Or has it proven that humans are adaptable? Every scenario in your simulation is based on historical conflicts where my people were facing extinction. Of course, they fought with everything they had. Survival makes you creative in ways that routine military exercises never could." She gestured toward the tactical displays, still showing her successful negotiation. "But when survival isn't threatened, when there's hope for a better solution, humans are perfectly capable of choosing peace. The simulation proved that today," a Draxi observer called out from the crowd. "Yet the historical records show humans fighting wars among themselves with unprecedented brutality. How do you explain that level of violence if your species truly prefers peace?" Alex took a deep breath, knowing this question would determine everything that followed. "Because we were scared. For most of human history, resources were scarce and the environment was hostile. We fought each other because we thought it was the only way to ensure our families would survive. But we also learned from those mistakes." She pulled up images on the main display, showing Earth's recovery from the devastation of the resource wars. Cities rebuilt with alien technology, former battlefields transformed into parks and memorials, humans working together on projects that spanned continents. "These pictures were taken last year," Alex continued. "Earth isn't the wasteland your intelligence reports suggest. We've spent the last 50 cycles rebuilding our world and learning to live together. The same adaptability that made us dangerous in war has made us innovative in peace." Cadet Vale, the Christech who had failed her simulation attempt, stood up with her crystalline form flickering thoughtfully. "If this is true, why has Earth remained isolated? Why haven't humans requested membership in the Galactic Alliance?" "Because we know how you see us," Alex replied simply. "Every transmission we've intercepted, every diplomatic discussion we've monitored treats humanity like a plague to be contained. Would you apply for membership in an organization that considered your entire species a threat?" The auditorium fell silent as beings throughout the crowd considered this perspective. Many had never thought about how their own fear might be perceived by the humans they were studying. Instructor Kira stepped forward, her expression showing the struggle of someone whose core beliefs were being challenged. Cadet Chen, assuming your interpretation is correct, what would you propose? How should the galaxy approach a species with such destructive potential? The same way you'd approach any other species, Alex answered. With respect, open communication, and the understanding that everyone wants basically the same things: safety for their families, opportunities for their children, and the chance to build something better than what they inherited. She turned to address the entire auditorium, seeing hundreds of faces from dozens of species all focused on her words. Humans aren't monsters or war machines. We're people who learn to survive in a difficult universe. Give us partners instead of enemies, hope instead of fear, and you might be surprised by what we can accomplish together. A new voice spoke from the back of the auditorium. An inspiring sentiment, but this academy's mission is to prepare for threats, not to engage in diplomatic speculation. Everyone turned to see Admiral Korthak, the station commander, making his way down the aisle. His massive hegemony frame towered over the assembled cadets as he approached the front of the room. Alex felt her stomach drop as she recognized the being who had personally signed the order for Earth's continued quarantine. "Admiral," Instructor Kira said, snapping to attention, "I was about to file a full report on today's simulation anomaly." "I've been monitoring the situation," Korthak replied, his deep voice carrying ominous authority. "The question now is what to do with this information." He stopped directly in front of Alex, studying her with eyes that had seen decades of galactic conflict. "You've demonstrated that humans can indeed defeat human tactics through unconventional means. But you've also confirmed that your species possesses capabilities that concern the Alliance." "Sir," Alex said, forcing herself to maintain eye contact despite her fear, "I've proven that humans can choose peace when given the opportunity. Isn't that worth considering?" Admiral Korthak was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then unexpectedly he began to smile. "Cadet Chen, you've just provided the most compelling argument for human integration that the Alliance has ever heard." The auditorium erupted in surprised conversation as the implications sank in. Alex stared at the Admiral in shock, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You see," Korthak continued, "the Alliance has been debating the human question for decades. Some members advocate for preemptive action against a potential threat. Others argue for continued containment. But no one has presented evidence that humans might actually be valuable allies rather than dangerous enemies." He gestured toward the simulation displays. "Your demonstration today suggests that human adaptability and strategic thinking could be assets rather than liabilities. A species capable of such innovation might help us solve problems that traditional approaches cannot address." Alex felt tears forming in her eyes as she realized what this meant. "Sir, are you saying that Earth might be considered for Alliance membership?" "I'm saying that you've earned the right to make that case officially," Korthak replied. "Your graduation with highest honors is confirmed as promised. But more than that, you're hereby appointed as Earth's first official liaison to the Galactic Alliance. Your mission will be to facilitate formal diplomatic contact between our civilizations." The auditorium exploded in celebration as cadets realized they were witnessing a historic moment. Alex found herself surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, all eager to congratulate her and ask questions about humanity. 6 months later, Alex stood in the same training room wearing the uniform of a Alliance Diplomatic Corps officer. Before her sat a mixed class of human and alien cadets, all learning to understand each other's perspectives on conflict resolution and military strategy. "Today we'll be studying the Terra campaign simulations," she announced to her students. "These scenarios are designed to test your ability to find peaceful solutions to apparently impossible conflicts. Remember, the goal isn't to defeat your enemies, but to understand what they're really fighting for." As she activated the first simulation, Alex smiled at the irony. The room that had once been used to study human violence was now teaching the galaxy's future leaders how to choose understanding over fear. It wasn't the ending she had expected when she first arrived at the academy, but it was exactly the future humanity and the galaxy both needed.